I'm gonna show you guys how I recreated this dimensional blonde look as seen on Margo Robbie. I like to keep my sectioning super simple. So I'm sectioning off a mohawk at the top of the head, and on both sides of that mohawk, I'm sectioning off the perimeter of the hairline. And these two small sections stop right behind the ear. And here's a little 360 so you can see this sectioning from all angles. So I'm gonna start by tackling the largest section at the back of the head. And I'm going to be using my favorite lightener, which is the Redken Flash Lift Blonde Idol. And on an actual client, I would use 10 volume developer, but because this is a doll head, I'm using 20. So again, I'm starting at the back of the head because this is the largest section and I want to maintain the most dimension here. But I also wanna make sure that the ends are the brightest part of the hair. And the most efficient way to do this is by using a brick lay placement. So I'm going to be doing a deep tease on every single subsection and completely saturating the pieces of hair mids to ends. And by doing a deep tease, once I brush that back out, not only is it going to diffuse any harsh lines, but it's also going to maintain depth. And one of the most important things that I always do is I always prep my foils with lightener first. The main reason I do this is to ensure saturation front to back. This is going to result in the best lift possible because I know that the hair isn't going to lift unevenly. But doing this also gives the hair something to stick to, so your application in general is much more clean. You can see that I'm continuing to work up the head in that brick lay placement, but once I get to this part of the head specifically, it gets a little bit trickier and I have to get creative. It's important not to overthink about the sectioning too much. Sometimes you have to pivot a little depending on the curvature of the head, or sometimes just simply because the pattern of sectioning stops working. And as you can see here, I'm just going with the flow of the curve of the head and how much hair I have left in this section. I ended up just doing 2 big triangle sections on both sides of the head. And if I were working on a real human head, my sections would probably have to be a lot smaller, so that would mean more foils, depending on the density of my client. Now this has left me with one large section in the back, and this is too big to put into one foil, so I'm splitting it down the middle. And this is still going to look the same if I were to put this entire section into one foil, but this is going to ensure that I get a really good lift, because too much hair in one foil will not lift as well. Now we can finally move on to the 2 small front sections. This is where I like to create my money piece. So I'm going to weave out that front hairline and I'm going to feather that lightener really close to the hairline, but I do maintain some depth there, so I'm keeping about 1/4 of an inch away from the scalp. And I always like to check the other side of the foil because sometimes I'm surprised and it's not as saturated as I thought it was. And because most of my actual clients have naturally dark coarse hair, it's super important to make sure that I saturate really thoroughly. So now I'm continuing and doing zigzag slices. I'm not leaving any hair out because I want the hairline to be super bright. I'm teasing these sections because I want to make sure that there are no harsh lines. I ended up doing 3 foils in this section on each side. Now it's time to foil the mohawk section. I'm going to be taking 1/2 inch slices and alternating between weaving and then teasing. The hair that is left out of the weave section, I am going to be tipping out. So I like to push the hair that is left out to the sides of the head to keep everything organized. By alternating between weaving and teasing, I'm creating a super diffused result at the top of the head. And the reason I'm tipping everything out in the mohawk section is so that it connects to everything we did in previous sections. Now we have to connect that money piece. So Karen is weaving out that front hairline just like I did on the 2 side sections. And this is what the foil pattern should look like when it's completed. I was able to lift this doll head all the way to a level 8, which is pretty good. If time allows during an appointment, I like to blast dry the hair before toning with Redken Shades EQ. I'm going to root tap the mohawk section using 5N. There's no need to root tap anything other than that mohawk section and the hairline because everything in that larger section was deep teased, so it's gonna be very diffused. For the all-over formula, I did 3/4 9N, 1/4 7N, and a cap full of 8V. I always spray the hair down with this Schwarzkopf hair primer because it balances out the pH and ensures that the toner grabs evenly roots to ends. And when using Redken Shades EQ, it's important to let the toner sit for the full processing time. In my opinion, a beautiful color is nothing without a beautiful cut. For this specific look, Margo Robbie has beautiful texturized layers and fringe. So I'm parting the hair into 4 standard sections. Before giving a client a layered haircut, it's really important to consider their density because layering hair chips into density. So if the client is lacking density, their hair is only going to be left looking and feeling much more thin. When I'm cutting bangs, I like to bring the hair forward to the bridge of the nose. Then I'll point cut to remove the excess length. The final touch is to bring the bangs directly up and cut 2 fingertips in length off the ends. Then I'll blow dry those bangs into place, and I'm curling the hair using a 1.5-inch barrel size curling iron. This size barrel is perfect for loose, subtle waves. I finished off the hairstyle with texture spray, which also helps mold those bangs into place. The final result looks absolutely stunning, and I think it looks pretty dang close to the Margo Robbie pictures. Here's a look at the hair from the back and underneath so you guys can see the beautiful blend. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.